Testing to see if y'all can hear me.
Hello.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
But we could not hear you.
You can hear me now?
No, I'm just kidding. We could hear you. Sorry.
How could you ask if you could hear me now?
No, we hadn't turned on our mics and we were talking.
Good evening. I'm going to call this October 16th City of Sammamish Planning Commission meeting to order. Let's start out with roll call. Mike Bresco.
I'm here.
Mike is virtual tonight. Sudha Sankara.
Here.
Syed Safavian.
Here.
Ajay Chakrapani.
Here.
I am Mark Boffman. And we have not heard from John Bachman, and Hisham El-Kawad is probably not going to join us this evening. Okay, next, the agenda. Anybody else have any comments on the agenda? There was a suggestion that maybe we move the order so that the public hearing is first, which we do lots of times. I don't know that it makes too much difference, but I'm okay doing that. Any objections to that?
No.
No. Okay, so we're going to switch old business item and public hearing. So the public hearing is on the docket. Old business is on code for SMC Title 21, so we'll switch those. Help me remember to make sure we do that. All right, next is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, October 2nd, right? Anybody have any corrections to the October 2nd meeting minutes? Okay, we'll call the minutes approved. Next, we'll do public comment. I just want to remind everybody, if you do have a comment on the docket item that we'll be having a public hearing on, you can do that at that time. Anything else, now is the time. Who would like to make public comment? Paul?
Thank you.
Good evening. There we go. Am I on? Yeah. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. It's time to plan for growth. Housing growth is the main issue of this campaign. And we have planned for external regional growth, but we haven't planned for internal local needs. Our negotiated 2100 regional target was about 1/3 of the gross share based on the city and town cohort for the Sammamish population. Regional growth contemplates population growth set by Office of Financial Management and natural birth and death rates. Its analytics are based on state and county metrics, not on internal housing needs at a local level. Internal housing need shortage gaps are determined by comparing current housing supplies on the ground with local economic and demographic and workforce needs over life and for the future. Our city has a notable shortage of affordable housing from 30 to 80%, and that's a price range of about 175 to 500,000. And those estimated shortages are in the neighborhood of twice of our regional target number. And then different, diverse, and smaller market rate housing, primarily priced from 500 to $1.4 million, are a far larger need, somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 times our target, the 2100. And then we have a surplus relative to economic, demographic, and workforce needs of large single-family homes, mostly priced at $1.5 million. Why optimally alleviate citywide housing imbalance market rate gaps, primarily in centers? Well, it's got the power to resolve city operating fiscal imbalance with sustainable added revenues in the neighborhood of $15 million a year. It can expedite phasing out and then eliminating the recently passed 6% utility tax. Raise capital for desired community projects, one-time and recurring. Provide residents housing variety options to stay over life, many saving $25,000 a year or more who choose to stay. Yield balanced sustainable housing for future generations and continued rich social fabric. Lower per unit car trips and students generated to about a quarter that of single family homes. Improve community character, enable a host of environmental betterments. I suggest we add around 5,000 market rate to the comp plan and meet those concurrently with the affordable housing target. Appreciate the chance to speak. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Paul. Anybody else? Okay. So as I said, we're going to switch this around. So next we will do the docket item. I just want to remind everybody kind of the order of how this goes.
I'm sorry, I'm having one person wanting to speak on.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't see anybody up there and forgot. So go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Brennan, I'm going to promote you to panelist now.
Peter, you're on mute.
There we go. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good now.
Great. Good evening, commissioners, residents, and staff. My name is Peter Brennan. I'm the Vice President of Land Development at Innovation Realty Partners. Thank you for your dedication to this important work. I'm here to voice support for moving forward with the town center rezoning shown on the future land use map and related code updates. First, zoning is how we implement the comprehensive plan on the ground. The plan sets the why, zoning delivers the how by placing the right uses in the right locations. Advancing this rezoning work turns shared values into real outcomes. A walkable downtown for Sammamish with more livable neighborhoods, better environmental stewardship, and a fiscally healthy city. This effort also directly supports the Sammamish Town Center sub-area plan work. Town Center is our walkable, mixed-use downtown. Aligning the future land use map and zoning with the sub-area vision will concentrate growth where services and infrastructure can support it, offer more affordable housing choices, reduce car trips for daily needs, lower city costs, and promote more local spending. Clear and predictable zoning gives both residents and the private sector confidence to invest in high-quality placemaking that includes active ground floors, safe multimodal streets, human-scaled blocks, better transit options, and superior stormwater solutions that are integrated within our parks and plazas. Second, we also appreciate the city's stakeholder process. Good planning is inclusive and iterative. We look forward to learning more as details evolve and to constructively contribute at each milestone and together build a future-ready community. Finally, as you move from policy to implementation, we urge close coordination between public works standards, development code, and zoning, especially in the town center. Street sections, frontage treatments, utilities, and stormwater should support the urban form that the sub-area plan calls for. When these components align, we get well-planned infrastructure, superior architectural designs, enhanced public spaces, and more predictable outcomes for neighbors and applicants alike. Thank you for your service and for the opportunity to comment. Given the importance of this project, we welcome any opportunity to meet directly with the Planning Commission to answer any questions. We look forward to continued collaboration. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Anyone else, Lena? And by the way, thank you for interrupting and keeping me honest. It's an important job. Okay, now we'll move on to our docket item for this evening. And as I was starting to say, I want to just remind everybody how this goes. We traditionally do it with Planning Commission. So we'll have staff presentation of the item. We'll ask questions of staff. Then we'll open and close the public hearing and take any public comment. Then someone makes a motion and seconds. Then we have any debate, discussion, conversation around the topic. And at some point, I'll call for a vote. So that's kind of the sequence, the goal being to ask whatever questions we have from staff on the first pass, and then the second pass, only asking questions if they come out of the public comment. Sort of generally try to organize it that way. So let's start out with presentation of the docket item.
Good evening, everyone. Can someone confirm that you can see my screen?
If it's a picture of City Hall, we can see it.
You probably recognize this picture. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jackie Belial, and I am a management analyst with Community Development Department. Tonight, I'll be giving a presentation on the 2025-2026 docket requests and staff's recommendations. After, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing, deliberate, and make a recommendation to the City Council on which docket requests should be docketed. As a refresher, the docket is an annual process for considering text amendments to the city's comprehensive plan or development regulations or site-specific land use map amendments. Anyone is able to submit a docket request as long as they are in by the annual deadline of 5 p.m. on the first Monday in August. A quick review of the docket process before we go over tonight's docket request. The first step is deciding which proposals should be put on the docket for consideration in the coming years. Any items that are on the docket will go through the legislative review process where they will be fully considered and reviewed. So if City Council chooses to docket an item and it is added to the work plan, staff will complete a more thorough review and return to Planning Commission and Council for further discussion and consideration. So tonight we are making a list of things to do or to be worked on in the future and not necessarily reviewing each item in detail now. So after tonight's public hearing, the City Council will have a public hearing on November 18th and vote on a resolution to set the docket. So that's the background information, and we'll review the docket request that we received and the staff recommendation. So the first docket request was a text amendment to the town center plan submitted by city staff. After further discussion, the city decided to withdraw the request. So when the request was prepared and submitted back in August, the updates to the town center plan and the development regulations were expected to be completed by December this year, 2025. Soon after it was submitted, the project schedule changed. So the town center plan updates and development regulation updates are now expected to be complete in 2026. So the timing of the docket request no longer aligned with the timing of the project. So the city withdrew the text amendment docket request on October 8th. And we may resubmit this docket request for 2026-2027 docket, but we will no longer be considering it tonight. So I might see you back here next year. The second docket request is a site-specific land use map amendment for Building 120, which until recently was used as the Central Washington University campus. So the property is located off of 228th next to East Lake High School, and it was the Mars Hill Church for many years. People still recognize it as that before the city bought it in 2015. And CW started renting the building in 2017, and they ended their lease just this past summer. So the city is proposing changing the future land use designation of this property from neighborhood residential to mixed use center, which would allow for the property to be rezoned through the zone reclassification process. So a rezone of this property would be consistent with the shopping center to the north and the town center development to the west and south. As a mixed use center, the former campus could be used for a wider range of purposes, like civic, community, cultural, and community gathering space, recreational uses, and affordable or workforce housing. So Title 24A of the Sammamish Municipal Code requires that all docket requests be analyzed based on specific criteria. So those criteria are how the request aligns with staff work plan items, if there is enough budget to complete the work, if there is staff availability to complete a full review of the request, and if the request is consistent with the city's current policies and priorities. So this is the staff recommendation for the docket request. We have answered no to work plan alignment because this item does not align with existing work plan items, but it could be added if that was directed by the city council. For both budget and staff availability, we've put limited. The majority of the work would be done in-house, but additional budget could be needed for consultant support if current contracts are not sufficient. And staff would be available to work on this item, but the timing of other work plan items might have to shift in order to accommodate going through the legislative review process for this request. In terms of policy and program consistency, this request is consistent with local, regional, and state policies and requirements. So for these reasons, staff recommends that this request be docketed, as the proposed changes will provide more opportunities to continue community conversations and find the best use for this site. So for next steps, after tonight, there will be a public hearing with the City Council on November 18th to set the docket. And should the request be docketed, legislative review would likely occur in late 2026. And then before we close, I just wanted to share, I do have two recommended motions for during the public hearing. The first would be to recommend that the city docket the request as shown in the agenda packet. And the second would be if you would like to modify or amend the request in any way, you can make a motion starting with this sentence. I can come back to this screen when we reach that point as well. But if there are any questions, we can take them now.
Ajay, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. So the question that I had, you said that this was limited, the staff availability as well as the budget was limited. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you said that this is limited and it might take from some other initiative that we might be allocating time for. I might not be using the right word that you had used, but that we might be taking from there, or that we would need some more help from outside to get this work completed. I'm trying to align the two of them into the sentence, into the staff availability limited and the coverage in budget limited. So how does that work? Isn't there a risk that we might say we'll do it and we end up coming up short on all fronts? with this?
I can take that one.
Oh,
Hi.
hi.
So in terms of the budget ties really to like any environmental review that we would need to be done for the site as we start doing a more in-depth analysis. We want to make sure if we're coming back with a recommendation to adjust the future land use map that we're giving you enough information to help inform that decision. That's something we can't do in-house just based on the technical needs. So we do have existing contracts that cover that. It just depends on how much they've been used up so far on our other development review work and if we would need to add budget for that.
So it's at a line item level that you're saying,
Correct.
just on that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in terms of the staff availability, we have a very full list of items we want to get through for our work plan for next year. And some of that will be refined and directed by City Council at their retreat in, I believe, early February of '26. So if this is an item that does get docketed, we'll have to find a way to fit that in along with those and kind of prioritize what moves forward first.
Got it. So then it is a discussion point at the offsite in February, but not necessarily here. Now we are just supposed to look at it to say, does this make sense given those constraints and the availability is there? It's not zero. We should just consider it at that point. Did I get that right now?
Yes, that's
Okay, got
correct.
it.
Thanks.
Syed, did you have something?
A couple of questions. Question number one, in a typical year, how many items do you have on the dockets?
I would say there is no typical year for the docket.
2025.
That's a good answer.
We've had some docket requests in the past. I would say at most there's usually 3 to 4 maximum docket requests. However, oftentimes the requests are very complex and involve, once we start talking with the applicants, there's multiple parts to what's being requested. And so what will seem like one docket request is actually really like 10 or 15 docket requests because it's impacting so many different text amendments that they want done. So it varies. And then other years like this year, there's 1 or 2.
Second question, typically when we're saying that some limited staff availability, is that because of the time or knowledge or a combination of both?
It's primarily time. There are 3.
So you do have the staff with the capability of handling it.
Correct.
The minimum reliance on the consultant.
Correct.
It's not a matter of that you don't have the expertise to deal with it. It's a matter of time.
That's correct, with the exception of like environmental review, as I mentioned before.
Environmental review has to go to the outside agencies because we don't have anybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sudha, any questions?
These are all layman questions. Can you guys hear me okay? So this is just essentially basic rezoning from one to the other, right? And I was looking at it, and it was a church at first, and then it became a community college. But the zoning is residential on it?
I believe, and Avril, maybe you can confirm, I believe that it's because Central Washington University is a school. Schools are allowed in residential zones. So this change will allow just a much more wide variety of things that we could do with the building besides educational purposes.
Okay. Because I remember they were renting that their auditorium at CW for parties, pretty much. So I thought it was not residential zoned. Okay.
I think that, and I'm not the expert, but originally it was a church, and it's pretty common that churches are built in residential neighborhoods. So they're
nonprofit.
left as a residential zone, and I suspect it just never got changed. So now we're talking about considering that.
Now I have a silly question. So why do we have to go on a docket? Can't you just submit an application for rezoning as a city to yourself?
So it's a 2-part process. So we have to update the comp plans map first because that's our overarching plan. So that's what this is for. And then if that gets approved by council, they say they want to change the future land use map, then there's a subsequent step where it would go through the current zoning to change it from residential to community business or something else.
Thank you.
Mike, I can't see you, but did you have anything?
I was just about to raise my hand. So, hey, I guess this builds a little bit on Ajay's question, and it has to do with timing and prioritization. So, and this is two parts. So the first part is because of the workload next year, which I can imagine, work being done around the plan for town center and, a number of other things. If this is docketed, and it becomes therefore part of the work plan, but later in the year, in 2026, it appears that there are other priorities. Shifting that into 2027 would certainly be doable. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So, oftentimes we can't get to a docket item right away, or we need an extension because the work just hasn't aligned. Like, for example, with the TMP and the docket requests that we had from the prior year. So we know we're going to come back to make updates to the comprehensive plan based on updates to the TMP that will be done. Those are not ready yet. So those will happen in 2026, even though initially we thought they'd be done in 25. So it just depends where work is at. It depends what our workload is, but items will carry over.
And then the second one is about, also in a way about the timing. I know the Y uses that space. There's some thought about using it for, youth centers and so forth. If this isn't docketed, does it inhibit use of the space in these kinds of ways that people are either using it or thinking about using it?
That is a very good question. I don't have enough information or knowledge to answer that, but we can certainly follow up with the Planning Commission with an answer.
Okay. Yeah, and it surely would if there would be a bigger change than that. Like using that for some space for low-income housing or something like that, emergency housing, right? That would be a very different thing that we would need to have the permitting done for.
Was that it, Mike?
Okay. Well, that's all that I had. So
Okay.
thanks for recognizing me, Mike.
I have just one kind of for the public record question. Is there any plan behind this to do anything with the property? Or is this just a appropriate practice to rezone it so that in the future, so there's no, again, for the public record, no plan to sell it, no plan to do something else. There's no secret plan going on. This is just a matter of rezoning it to something appropriate.
As far as I am aware, this is just to rezone it so that it's appropriate and to allow a more further conversation with the community about what makes the most sense to go there.
Great.
I was under the impression, based on a conversation that I heard with the city council, is that there is a proposed change. The proposed change should make the place available as a community center. And you're saying that there is no...
Well, but
I'm saying I'm not privy to that information, but it's not to say it hasn't been discussed. I'm just,
A lot of discussion.
I have not been
Well,
told.
but I think, let's be clear here. The zoning has to do with if someone wanted to tear the building down, if someone wanted to change the property, much more than if somebody wants to have a party there. So I think that that's one of the things that in moving this forward to the docket, we will expect to see, you all will expect to see as part of the discussion next year is what does rezoning it actually mean and what could happen? And that's where the debate should come in, is what could somebody do if we rezone it? I very much doubt that in the meantime, someone using it for something, unless there's some kind of complaint, obviously, is probably not going to be affected. So I would hate to see the building sit empty and not be used for good, higher purposes in the community just because of the zoning, and I don't think that that would happen.
I have also another question. This has to do with a 21-acre property. So when you look at a given zone in an urban area, it's more than one property. So when you go through this change, would that affect the entire zone and would affect that particular property?
It's just for that particular property.
And the second question, back to kind of AJ's question. So are we saying that if the council approves this on November 18, then you have two items potentially to deal with it in 2026 One is the town center plus this.
There's a lot more than two, but
No, as far as the docket items.
yeah, well, the town center is not a docket item.
Oh, they're not.
That's been withdrawn. Yeah, so
Well, that's withdrawn for 2025, but it's not withdrawn for 2026.
the town center text amendment, that's been withdrawn for this year. So we may bring it back and submit it again for next year, so in the summer of 26, 27. But at this time, we're not moving forward with that because we want to focus on the work to actually create the draft town center plan and get that adopted before we go and say, okay, we are going to make any changes.
I'm a little bit confused. Are we looking at the completion of the town center item to be going to the 2027 or 2026?
So there's two different things. So the town center work, the update to the draft town center plan and the development regulations will still be moving forward. Those are not docket items. There was also a request that was a docket item relating to kind of implementation of the town center plan and development regulations. However, we withdrew that because the timing doesn't align, right? They're not going to be adopted in 25. They're going to be adopted in 26, hopefully. So we want to wait for that work to happen, and then we will likely submit another text amendment to allow us to make changes if we see that in implementation of the updated.
And that would be
plans.
potentially in 2027.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Anything else for Jackie or Miriam or Evan? Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to open the public hearing for anybody that would like to make comments about this docket item. And I'll say welcome to John Bachman, who's joining us. Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would anyone like to make comments about this docket item? Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Debbie Treen, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. It actually is a little confusing because it was my understanding that comprehensive plan amendments for next year were kind of broadly captured in the August 5th deadline, but apparently they aren't since they haven't shown up. But I'm going to give you my testimony on it anyway for future reference. I believe there's an error in our comprehensive plan where it established a goal of becoming an urban growth center as defined by King County. And I want to point out some of the criteria that's required to do that. And one is there must be market potential with evidence supported by studies of future market potential to support the planned growth. This relates to the town center. And given that we are now being told that with 2,000 units, we cannot create the kind of town center that we wanted to create, and that is what is in the current comprehensive plan, we do not meet that criteria to become an urban growth center. In addition, the size centers are typically a minimum of 320 acres, unless they already have high-capacity transit, which we don't. Transit center must be a major transit hub with existing or planned high-capacity transit service like light rail, commuter rail, or ferries with all-day service frequent. We don't meet that criteria. I'm not going to go through all the criteria, but if you look at the King County planning policies, an urban growth center for Sammamish would never be approved by the GMPC or the Puget Sound Regional Council, and I would like to see that removed from our comprehensive plan and any reference to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Anybody else? Is there anyone online? Learned my lesson that time. Oh, are you going to go, Paul? Yeah. Okay.
I don't know at all. Okay. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. I actually support adding a town center text amendment to the docket. I'll explain why in just a second. But first, 5K is okay. So adding 5,000 internal market rate housing target to the comp plan to meet alongside 2,100 affordable housing is only 5,000, and that's okay for the city. It's not too much. It's less than 70% of what we need on the lowest threshold, and would enable a host of the beneficial effects extraordinaire to allow up to 5,000 of our households stay in Sammamish over 20 years as their housing needs change over time. Now, as to the town center text amendment, we did a transportation master plan and had immediately following up on it a text amendment. There can be a lot of things that come up during a plan, so it might be wise to have a text amendment, whether it is needed or not. The town center is forecast to be done in 2026. Having a town center text amendment docket could be used later that year, could be used the next year, could be used the year after that, because dockets don't expire. I see only upsides to having it rather than downsides. And what happens if ultimately the county or the city says, well, we don't need that? Then they just make a official motion on the dais and it all goes away. So I don't see any downside to it. Mary Wichter and I sat through 2 sets of docket changes in, I believe it's 21A or 24A, I can't recall the code section, but we know it inside and out as far as the thing, and they're hard to get docket items started. And in this case, I don't see any negative reason for having it. It would give the chance to change something if something was overlooked. For example, I agree with Debbie Treen's comment on not having a regional growth center in the comp plan. I read that plan over and over. I never saw that. I don't know what was wrong with me. I never saw it. It wasn't talked about. But that's an example of a change that may come up, something in the town center plan. And lastly, you guys are going to be talking about a North Star for town center and getting things right. I suggest a 4-legged stool where you use rigorous, conscientious, and heartfelt approaches to transportation, housing, finance, and other holistic material effects. So 2 things. It's okay to 5K in the comp plan for internal market rate housing, and add the town center docket item is my recommendation. Appreciate the chance to speak.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Lena, do we have anybody online?
No commenters online.
See, I checked that time. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Would someone like to please make a motion that we can, and second that, so then we can have any discussion we want to have? And they're up on the screen, and they're also in the packet right here. Or you can make one up of your own if you like.
Okay, so I move on option 1, move to recommend that City Council dockets the 2026 docket request is shown in the October 16, 2025 agenda packet.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in and it's seconded that we recommend to the City Council the docket item. Any discussion or conversation?
Okay, I made the motion, but I do have a question for Evan. So is Paul's comment of not withdrawing the town center from the docket, his assertion was there was no upside and no downside. Do you care to comment on that? Oh, thanks, Miriam.
You guys can do rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah,
Officiate.
I mean, I guess I agree with what he says. There's no upside, there's no downside, but it's kind of it creates a work process, and if we don't need to do it this year, then why do it? If we need to make changes to the town center plan next year, we'll be working on it next year, so let's just do it as part of that process instead of creating another one.
I agree with Evan. I think I would just add it also creates a little bit of confusion as we saw it here, right? We have the town center process going forward, and it just, I think, simplifies it to keep it delineated.
Plus, if we are limited on staff availability for one item, then we're even more limited on 2 items. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to take a vote on the motion. It's been moved and seconded that we recommend this docket item as shown in the packet to the city council. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
no. Thank you. I'll call that unanimous. Okay, thanks, everybody. We don't do as many public hearings these days, so sometimes it takes a minute for me to remember what we're doing. Now we're going to switch to our old business item, which is, we talked about a couple weeks ago, review of the red line code edits that Avril is going to talk about from SMC Title 21, if the technology can cooperate. Don't worry, the camera, I'm sure the camera was on me, so.
Hello again. Avril Beatty, current Planning and Permit Center Manager in the Department of Community Development, and this mic is on the wrong side. I returned to you after 2 weeks with some initial drafted red lines to minor changes to Title 21. Sure you all were very riveted by our last discussion. Just as a point of information, the agenda bill listed 10 items. This presentation is also 10 items, so nothing was added or subtracted. However, the only minor change in order was adding the 3,000 square foot discussion to the last slide, because I know that's the one that has the most discussion to be had. So we'll get going. Here we go. So the plat certificates that we had discussed, simple code change, just redline that section. We love using the word reserved, so that way we don't have to renumber everything else. If there is no objections, we'll go to the next one. Great. So this was the cottage housing definition. Since we don't have a definition currently, we were looking to create one based on a recent director's code interpretation, where it would be a 1,500 square foot maximum unless additional limitations apply. And this is referencing the density bonus for cottage housing in the R1/middle housing overlay 1, where you can do more cottage homes, and they are smaller in square footage, depending 900 or 1,200 square feet, depending on how many you are looking to do. So outside of that, this would just be the 1,500 square foot. This is what was within the sort of a regional average, and would also not trigger the inclusionary affordable housing calculations. So we felt like this was a good balance. If you would like a larger or smaller number, I will happily edit this text accordingly.
Go ahead, Ajay.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I have one question on this. The 1,500 is the built-up area for the dwelling, right?
Correct. It's the size of the living space.
Size of the living
So a
space.
garage would not count.
Exactly. So should we want to add that definition? Because we are talking of definitions. Should we add that definition into that definition?
I can happily, easily add a little sentence segment that says, this does not include any garage or other uninhabitable space.
I was only aiming for a clause, but I'll take a sentence any day. Thank you.
Was this a subject of extensive discussion at the last Planning Commission as far as setting the 1,500, and there are a lot of discussions about, do we need to identify that and make
We
reference
needed to
it?
have a number, because as
I
of
believe that the
today,
person that was very strongly opposed to that is not here tonight. Hisham was the one that he brought.
I
it
think Hisham's, the one we're going to get to yet was the one that Hisham is,
up. It's not this one.
no.
it's the last one that he had the most feelings about.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we'll get there. But I will add number 2.
I would just add as a comment that I think 1,500 is a good place to start.
Yeah.
It seems appropriate, and it can always be adjusted later if it turns out there's something we've missed.
And also, if there's ever modifications to the inclusionary housing regulations where that square footage number change, it would be appropriate to change this simultaneously. Thank you. Next. For our definition of accessory dwelling unit, this was also based on a recent director's code interpretation where we just wanted to clarify that an ADU, while it can be connected to a primary residence, you can have internal connections if you like, but it also does need to have its own entrance so that it can be separate living from the primary dwelling unit. So we just wanted to augment this definition a little bit.
That's good.
Okay, great. Thank you. So under the zoning, the zoning reclassification regulations, we had discussed the difference between an area-wide rezone versus these quasi-judicial rezonings. And the quasi-judicial rezonings are meant to be small in scale. It's for homeowners or applications we have now where it's a group of homeowners who are working together to upzone their properties. And so we are clarifying that if you are not meeting the criteria for a quasi-judicial rezoning, you are an area-wide rezoning. And so that differentiation just isn't in the code as of today. So we just want to throw that in there. Any objections? Great. Yes.
Can we go back to the previous one? So from this, what we are saying is that if it is not the strict smaller definition, then by default it's the larger definition.
Correct, and it would have to go through the docket
We'd have
process.
to go through the docket process because the docket process.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Now I get it. Thanks.
Okay. So for unit lots, which are to allow alternative subdivision of land under the middle housing regulations, we wanted to take away this limitation that said that these unit lots could only allow one dwelling unit, which would prevent people from being able to have unit lots with duplexes or triplexes on them where those could be condos or other things. So it felt overly restrictive, and so we caught it and just wanted to put that allowance in that was part of the intent with the middle housing regulations. And this would not change the way, because there's so many ways of doing either all rental units or all condos or whatever, it potentially would have zero impact on the actual built environment. This is all just different schemes of ownership that are potentially available.
Can you explain what is a parent lot?
So under the middle housing regulations, the idea is if you have a large, like 2-acre lot and you've got your home on it, but you've got 1.5 acres that's just growing weeds and you don't want to do anything with it, but you've got grown adult children who want to raise their families and you want to build some middle housing to intensify your property. One option for allowing ownership within that larger parent lot is to do these, what get referred to also as like children lots. So you have a main parent lot that has the development standards for setbacks and whatnot apply. You have unit lots that can be smaller, sort of like divisions of land within, but it's not a traditional subdivision. So they can be condos or they could be townhouses or they can be some other type of smaller land ownership. And then if there's a common lot within the parent lot, it would be maintained and operated by an HOA, a homeowners association, something like that. So it's just to provide some variation.
But what is definition, land use definition of parent lot?
So the parent lot is the larger lot.
Define that. How do you define that?
I don't remember. Could you? Mr. Fisher is going to
So,
look up the definition of related house.
okay, so as long as he's doing that, I have a question. If I have a parent lot, just let's take your example, 2-acre lot, out of which I'm using half an acre for my primary residence, and that becomes the parent lot. And there's 1.5, and I want to decide to give it to some things and other things. Does it mean that the 1.5 acres is no longer bound by the setback rules or anything like that? Or?
So the parent lot is the full 2 acres.
Oh,
And
okay.
if you carve out your piece for your original house, that's going to be a child lot, a unit lot within that parent lot.
So when I had just one, that was a parent lot, but when I divide it, mine becomes a child lot too.
Well, so it depends, because you could propose a variety of ways of subdividing your land. You could, it's almost like when you're a kid and you're doing your coloring in your coloring book, you can use a million different colors on, a piece of paper. So the idea is that if you wanted to do an initial short plat because you want your kids to have their own HOA and you don't want to be a part of it, you could do an initial subdivision so that your lot with your half acre is a standalone. Yeah, and I don't have to deal with my children bickering, because we all know how kids are. And then that 1.5 acre could become a parent lot with unit lots within it. That's one route. The other route is the whole thing stays a parent lot and there are unit lots within it. You could
Can I
also...
make a suggestion here?
Yes.
An example of what we already have for unit lots or child lots is condominiums. So you've got a parcel of land with a building on it, and the building contains a bunch of child condominium. This is all assessor stuff that they have to track. So the same thing would happen with these.
That's absolutely
these unit
one
lots.
route, yeah.
So,
But this is subject to the zoning regulation. If the area, you live in an area that you cannot subdivide your property.
So
then
this
how
is,
would that
so
apply
under,
the-
if you don't have enough area to do a traditional subdivision under middle housing, if you are building a middle housing type, then you could potentially do a unit lot subdivision, so there could be ownership of those middle housing units.
So are
on
you
your
asking
property.
about the existing subdivisions that have
Right, let's say that you have a 2-acre property. If the city zoning regulation does not allow you to subdivide,
Oh,
then what is the definition of
So if you have a
parent
2-acre
lot?
site that's zoned R4 under regular
If it is
zoning,
R4, I totally understand.
You'd
But
be
if it
looking
is
at
R1?
8. Oh, so if it's R1, let's say it's R1, then you're looking at 2-acre site, 2 homes. However, under middle housing, you could have 8 within the 2 acres. So if you want to do the 8 under a middle housing type of structure, then you could do this unit lot subdivision, so there could be separate ownerships of those units within the parent lot.
This is assuming that you're rezoning from R1 to R4.
No, this is the middle housing overlay. The middle housing overlay 1, MHO 1, applies to the R1 zoning district. And so that middle housing overlay allows up to 4 middle housing units.
Sorry. Too many questions in my head. I'm going to ask one question. And I can hear Commissioner Hisham going in my voice saying, it's their right, why the hell are we interfering with this thing? But be that as it may, I'm going to ask this question anyway. If I had a 2-acre lot, and then my unit is the only one that's there, then that becomes what we are calling here as the parent lot that is there.
The overall 2 acres,
overall
yes.
2 acres. Then I say, okay, I'm going to take just the half acre that I'm using, and I'm going to give the 1.5 acres left to my 3 kids who are, like you said, bickering. And one of them decides, I'm going to build something over here. I'm going to build an R2 over here, and I'm going to get something done over here. The remaining 2 say, no, I want to just keep it as wasteland, and I'll decide what I want to do at a later point in time. From this definition, it looks like they will go through a unit lot subdivision process, and this will go step by step, right? One lot, which is my lot, one lot, which is one of the kids who says yes to it, and the remaining two don't come up yet, but will come up at some other point of time as a unit lot subdivision process. Aren't we inviting so much work for ourselves by trying to define it like this?
Not necessarily, because with any land use application, it has to be signed by the property owner. So whomever's owning the property has to sign the application for it to even come in. And so the kids would have to decide whatever it is that conforms to our middle housing regulations. So they can't just do whatever they want. It has to conform. And so those middle housing regulations, while they allowed that infill of density, but it's a smaller unit type, it's the cottage homes, the duplexes, the triplexes. So it's not the regular standard 3,000, 4,000 square foot home that you see in Sammamish. Shall we go?
Mike, did you have anything on this one?
Yeah, I was just about to raise my hand again. So this is for clarification. So, Everett, you've been mentioning about the middle housing. So is it correct to say that to get to a unit, to follow the unit lot subdivision process, we would be applying the middle housing overlay?
Correct. This would only apply to middle housing development.
Yep. And so here's a suggestion. The parent lot thing is, I'm not sure, actually helps the definition. It might. But if I rewrite this to say a subdivided lot approved through the unit lot subdivision process as it applies, or something like as it applies to the middle housing overlay, might be helpful in clarifying some of the discussions that we've been having. I recognize that there would be the parent lot, but that's kind of part and parcel to the unit lot subdivision process anyways. And I'm not sure that the parent lot piece here necessarily helps. It's just that we've got a unit lot that, and by definition, it has gone through this subdivision process that's needed or enabled or whatever because of middle housing. So again, I think it would be beneficial to have a clause at the end of this that refers to the middle housing overlay. It's applying based on the middle housing overlay, and maybe delete the parent lot from the definition, although I could go either way on that one. But otherwise, I think this is really focused on the definition and just being really clear about what this means to, readers who are not listening to all of this discussion that we're having.
Can I just, not to get too deep into the wordsmithing, but you could almost just say through the middle housing overlay unit lot subdivision process, and that might be enough for people to understand that that's really only where this applies.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, we'll add something to make that reference, to make it really clear that this is when it applies.
Yeah.
Then we can have that for the December 4th? Yes, yes.
Evan, did you find the definition? What was that?
I didn't see anything codified in the SMC, but just a general Google parent lot definition is the original larger parcel of land that is subdivided into smaller unit lots. And Avril might know exactly where in the SMC that definition exists. Oh yeah. Lot, comma, parent. She's good, folks. A lot which is
25 years of experience right here.
a lot which is subdivided into unit lots through the unit lot subdivision process.
I agree with Commissioner Mike's suggestions, but I would leave the parent lot there because if not, people might think like, oh, it's rezoning or something different, but definitely have the middle housing layer.
So when we bring back more honed language for you all, you can see if you like it, and then you can make additional tweaks. Okay.
Just one last comment for any viewers, and I'm not suggesting this get added to the language, but the middle housing overlay process can only be applied to about 20, maybe 25% of lots in Sammamish due to restrictions in subdivisions that already exist.
Next item, this was the one where we wanted to remove some conflicting language regarding a public comment period. This is within the commercial site development permit section. We want to strike this section and just reference or utilize the part that already exists in our administrative section that has a 21-day comment period. Any objections? Great. This is the language regarding the term of validity for a land use entitlement. So we wanted to create a little bit more flexibility so that a land use approval stays entitled and is in place and valid. And usually this is a 2-year period. Depending on the permit, it might be up to 5 years. But that it would only require that a complete building permit submittal be provided to the city to keep it alive. And I've worked on a couple of church projects that have required conditional use permits for expansions or whatever, and it was really hard for them to get their building permit submittal in time because they had to do fundraising. And so, this sort of change helps with those sort of projects, as well as any reasonable use exception or other conditional use permits that exist. Just funding seems to be harder and harder for applicants to get, so a little flexibility. Any objections or comments or thoughts? Mike, anything? Okay.
Maybe a word tweak to have of all, or of complete. It just, once you take out the red strikes, do a double check on how it reads.
Yes, thank you. Let me scribble that down. Thank you. All right, so shoreline substantial development permits are currently a type 4 land use decision that are decided by the hearing examiner and appealable to the Shorelines Hearings Board. We just want to make it a change to revert it back to being a type 2 land use decision. It was before, then the trail came through, it got changed. Now we have all of these dock permits going through a lot of process for something that has to meet a ton of criteria anyways. So we would like to revert it back to a type 2. If there's ever a need in the future, we might change it again. But in the meantime, there doesn't seem to have that need. Any objections? Seeing none. So the new number 9 is to allow more streamlining of building permit reviews that are related to lands that are being subdivided. Right now, building permit applications cannot be submitted until a final plat has been recorded, which means the lots then exist, and they are separate fee title pieces of dirt. Removal of this section would allow a building permit submittal to be accepted by the city so that there could be concurrent review of the building permit application while the site work was being completed through the site development permit, as well as review of the final plat. We would not be able to issue permits until that final plat is recorded, but this just allows some streamlining, and which also means that construction on the homes can start sooner and the site's not sort of sitting there without much progress towards the end of the site work.
So this only means that the review is going to be concurrent.
Correct.
The construction of the unit that you were talking about still is dependent on the final approval, which was anyway a process that we were going through. This just makes one of them concurrent so that it can get to that decision faster.
Right, and that concurrency is just happening at the end of an overall longer process.
Got it. Okay. Yep.
Any objections? Okay, we're on to your favorite one. This is the 3,000 square foot footprint. It applies to all buildings in all residential zoning districts. The initial concept was due to conversations and applications that we've been reviewing with property owners, we wanted to allow some sort of relief. So the initial thought was, oh, we should allow a one-time 300 square foot expansion for these homes that are otherwise legal non-conforming. They were built prior to this regulation being in place. But also make sure it doesn't apply. We didn't throw in an out for schools and other civic uses. So that was the initial thought. But then after the robust discussion that we had a couple of weeks ago, we were giving it some more thought. So then the other option that we were trying to consider, given that the footprint limitation was put in place because all the rules have to apply to all single family as well as middle housing projects. So if the concern is that the footprint would result in these large buildings, that by reducing the footprint, you'd have smaller buildings. However, what's on the ground floor, that first floor of development, generally isn't going to have a significant impact on any of their neighbors. Most people don't mind a single-story house being built next door to them. So considering that, while still trying to keep the intent of the volume limitations, we drafted some language to try to not regulate the ground floor and the first floor and only look at that same massing for the second and third floors. So the idea is that those floors would stick to a 3,000 square foot maximum, but the ground floor would not have a limitation. So this was our stab at trying to have a regulation to that effect. I would love some feedback. Is this clear? We were also trying to make sure that someone wasn't going to build a 40 square foot single story home that was 8,000 square feet and then come back and then fill it in, because that would have defeated the purpose of it to begin with. So we wanted to have some sort of height limit. So 24 feet for a single story home, if you've got a pitched roof to a peak, is pretty standard. So that's why we threw that in there, but we'd love some feedback.
Okay, let's start with a couple of definition. Floor plates. What is it?
Yeah. So we're trying to get at what point above grade.
Why don't you say ground level?
So
everybody understands ground level, but they don't understand.
So we're trying to figure out, how do we define what is a floor plate? At what point does the floor plate start getting regulated?
But first, what is a floor plate?
Oh, sorry. A floor plate, it's a construction term where if you have a multiple story structure, the floor plate is where the floor joists hit the structure, and it's the connecting membrane, or where the point loads get carried down through the wall. So it's usually a certain amount of strapping and a certain amount of bracing and whatnot. And so it's considered a floor plate because usually there's metal brackets to tie all of the lumber together.
Is it a physical separation of one floor to the other?
Yeah. And it's a very sort of clear point.
And what is the definition of volume?
So this is where...
What is the volume? Because we have to quantify this.
Right. So this is where, if someone wanted a 4,000 square foot footprint and they wanted all of their ceilings to be 20 feet tall, or say 25 feet tall, that's a very large volume. And so trying to figure out where's the cutoff.
Is the volume
it can
refers to air?
Yeah, so usually
volume?
the volume is so if you imagine a house as a balloon, right? That whole thing is the volume of the house. So this, and please bear with me. This was, usually these things are better crowdsourced, which is why we're here. Trying to figure out, is it floor plate, which is that connection of the wall where the floor hits it, or does it need to be by volume? Does it need to be within a certain height? And then once you're above 20 feet in height or 24 feet in height, then anything there has to be in a plane above the ground has to be limited to 3,000 square feet.
Why do we care as long as the applicant meets the requirement as far as building heights?
Well, so then that would be getting rid of this altogether. So the idea is that we would limit.
Why do you want to put a limit?
Because we need to have all the regulations apply to both single family and middle housing. So if we don't want it to apply to middle housing.
So we have this definition of volume.
This would apply to
R1
all
zone?
buildings.
I know.
Right. Yeah.
So we have the volume definition in R1 zone?
We don't. This is a brand new attempt at something.
So tomorrow, if I build an R1, I will have to follow this rule.
Well, nothing's been adopted yet.
No, I mean, let's assume the adoption is done. Let's assume it's done, and I want to build an R1, and he wants to build an R4. Then we both will have to.
It's the same
adhere to
regulation
this
that applies to
definition.
all of them, right?
But if before this adoption, if I want to build an R1, he wants to build an R4, I am not bound by this.
No, everybody's limited to the 3,000 square foot footprint, regardless of zoning district.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Today.
Got it.
So, what does, maybe I'm confused. Can we go back to our original conversation we had earlier, which is occupiable floor space at grade level? I mean, I realize there can be, some people often build houses that have multiple step up and step down, but that's still at the grade level, rather than try to use terms like floor plate or footprint, or can we just say occupiable space at the entry floor or something like that?
So we could say maximum square footage at any floor above the ground floor. This is where I sort of get some paralysis by analysis, because I have reviewed so many plans for homes. And when you have topography and steep slopes and people are trying to terrace homes within a landscape, you might have a home with 4 levels, but it's not a 4-story home. There may not be.
Staggered.
Right, it's staggered, it's tiered, it's terraced. So at what point, if they're all at grade, but it's terraced, if the whole thing is ground floor, then there wouldn't be a limitation, which could be fine. But then if you don't have, I need help with this, that's why I'm here. So if we're not concerned about someone doing a 5,000 square foot footprint that's 30 feet tall, like one single story, huge ceilings. Like
Yeah,
if that's not the concern, or is it that any ground floor, any volume above, 20 feet above grade would then be limited. Something like that, to keep things tiered, keep things stepped in.
Yeah, I think that as David described it, the concern is about the excessive mass of some of these large houses. And so if we can find a way to craft language that allows a living space that's larger without creating that excessive mass, that's really what we're trying to find a balance to get
Right.
to. And that's why I think, yes, you can have terraced homes, but still, if in that terraced home, it's still 3,000 feet per level, well, because we consider one level to be the one they can expand and the rest of them are 3,000, that still seems like a pretty reasonable
Right,
solution.
right.
And it's probably only 1 out of 50 or 100.
Maybe
so,
1,000, yeah.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about excessive mass, Mark, are we talking about a vertical or horizontal?
We're thinking more, Well, so volume.
What I'm hearing mostly is vertical. You're not
It's-
concerned about the horizontal side.
Right. So it's
And the vertical
once
is
we get-
dictated by the building heights.
Right. So generally, the finished floor of a second story is about 10 to 12 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
So one option would be any portion of a building that is less than 15 feet from the ground would not have the limitation. That's one way of doing it, or just whatever number you are comfortable with, whether it's 12 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet.
I'm still struggling to find out why are we putting that definition around it. If I were to have a house and I have the single floor, the ground floor as we will call it, the ground floor as we call it over here, and I set it to the regulation that you have over here, and tomorrow I wake up and say I'm going to create another floor and it's going to be a vaulted ceiling, and it's a vaulted ceiling like no other vaulted ceiling ever has been, and I do it, I'm still doing it on my land to my thing. What are we trying to solve here?
So it just has to be the same regulations apply to everything. So
No. What I'm asking is that are we trying to resolve that? You don't have these obnoxious displays.
I think what we're trying to solve is, let's say in your scenario, you have a large 5,000 square foot ground floor home.
Right.
And you've decided you want to build, as you described, wall to ceiling, 2 more stories on top of that.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden your neighbors are looking at a 5,000 square foot home that goes 45 feet into the air. That's
exactly.
what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to limit the amount of building that rises above
Got
its
it.
neighboring buildings.
Okay,
And
so-
the place that we had originally landed was buildings would be 3,000 square feet at their kind of maximum spread, and then they can go vertically to whatever the zoning allows.
Don't HOAs do that already? That kind of regulation?
the which ones?
The HOAs, don't they do that kind of regulation already?
HOA regulations are not the purview of the city. They're all
Correct,
different.
correct.
I don't know. So they're all different.
What I'm saying is that I'm going to use a phrase that I'm sure I'm going to get into trouble for, but that obnoxious display of power that we show, to say I'm going to build that 45-foot vaulted ceiling or something like that, is anyway being regulated in the city by HOAs which don't like to see a house which is very different from the current form of the houses that are there in their section. And at the same time, somebody who's not in an HOA is doing whatever they want anyway at this point in time. I'm still struggling to understand this definition of trying to do this thing when there seemed to be some kind of a...
Well, I think with the Phase 2 development regulations, we created rules that really kind of limit the idea that you can do whatever you want on your property. And we were trying to prevent more development that, you get a big, giant box of a house that goes right up to property lines and looms over its neighbors. So in Phase 2 development regulations, we, implemented floor to area ratios. That meant you could only cover so much of the lot. We had
Dynamic setbacks
and height restrictions. So this kind of builds on that concept of we as a community decided that we don't want big, tall buildings plopped in the middle of our residential neighborhoods. And the concern is with middle housing and the densities you can achieve in some of those middle housing areas, which it could be up to 18 units a lot, that somebody might build a walk-up apartment complex and it could be 5,000 square feet and it could go up 4 stories and now it's looming over all of the neighbors. So that's ultimately where we're trying to prevent. And HOA, whether HOA is allowed or not, isn't kind of what we're talking about here. We're talking about...
Got it. So we build that thing and we have one and somebody decides I'm going to build an R4, 5,000 square feet each, and it's going to be this massive structure in the middle of another one which looks like which looks like normal R4s, and suddenly now we have a huge R4 that's standing in the middle of it. that is the obnoxious display, and that's what you're trying to stop from coming up.
And neighbors being concerned that within their neighborhoods, they would get not just like one, the concern wasn't you would have one big, massive single-family home, but you would have one big, massive sixplex or fourplex or whatever.
Yeah. So to prevent that from happening as it
Right.
stands.
And I think what we're trying to discuss today is the idea that you could own, let's say, go back to the 2-acre example we were talking about earlier, is you could own 2 acres and you could decide that you want to build a large family home for yourself, 5,000, 6,000 square feet. You've got the floor to area ratio that you can do that. Previously, under the current rule set that says, well, you can't actually build that 5,000, 6,000 square feet. It has to be limited to 3,000 square feet. You can go up if you want, but the total base floor point can't exceed 5.
Yeah.
And I think what the commission was concerned about last time was that doesn't seem fair. I'm a landowner. I have the space to do it. I can afford to build a bigger home. We want to do that. So what this option is trying to create is for, those reasonable 1-2 story height limits, spread it out, do what you want. But if you're going to go taller than that, we say,
Bring it narrow.
yeah, let's confine the box so it doesn't get too large in scale.
Got it.
So my question was that, again, I'm kind of bringing it up again. This is where you have the building heights. Why the building heights regulation between that and FAR is not sufficient that you have to go through and identify this issue and be concerned about?
So cities, and Sammamish included, have multiple points of control over development, whether it's height, floor area ratio, a limit of impervious surface and hardscape, footprint, setbacks. So having this whole set of rules is very common. And so one option, or I guess of the options tonight, the first being small, the 300 square foot or some small one-time thing, just to grant a little bit of relief. Trying to figure out something to deregulate the ground floor in one way or another. If the Planning Commission feels that this 3,000 square feet overall is too much or is overreach or whatever, then one option is propose a code change for now, but then also provide a recommendation to City Council of this is a bigger policy issue that we want to address. So that's another way of trying to bring up this issue for the city as a whole to discuss versus me just trying to do some minor code changes.
How often you come across these issues when you're dealing with the property owners? They're coming
daily.
Really?
I mean, this one every couple of weeks. But of these issues, there's always something every day that requires a clarification where we wish something was written a little bit clearer or we find a gap or whatever. It's daily.
So a suggestion here, and I'm thinking sort of in a more positive light, that you state, and you guys are wordsmith experts, there's no size, no floor port, no square footage restriction on a single-family, single-story house. And then build on top of that. So Mark's, I'm getting it.
I don't think you can use single family because it would exclude.
Oh, okay, well, okay, single story. And then as you go up, look at the square footage restrictions. The wedding cake that we talked about probably a year ago, and I have 2 of those box houses on my street now. They're just square boxes. So using height restrictions and no restrictions on the ground floor. So it's really clear in the code, because that's not clear here, that if you want 9,000 square feet and you can meet all the other regulations and you have enough land, go for it. But when you start to go up, there are restrictions. And I guess the question is, if we built it that way, will that also meet the requirement of making it the same for all the other housing types that we need to? A little more positive than negative, I guess.
One other idea, thinking out loud, which I usually fail at. What if we said, use the existing regulation? So go at it differently. Say use the existing regulation, 3,000 square feet, yada, yada, except for a single level house. So in other words,
I don't think we can regulate the use. So it would just be any building. It has to be any building. Yeah.
Okay. But if you said accepting a single level structure.
Right. So it could be.
But we would still have the 3,000 square foot limit for anything that's above a single level. But if you're just building single level.
So maximum floor area for floors above the ground floor. And that way, if you have a finished floor above a ground floor, that has to be. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I would take out the second sentence of the footnote 11, because we would keep the exemption for schools and civic buildings.
Mm-hmm. Where's the 24 feet coming from?
That was that. So that is if you have a single-story building, a single-story home, having a pitched roof, a peak of 24 feet is pretty tall and is very common. So that would encompass most single-family, single-story homes.
So typically a floor is about, what, 10, 11 foot?
So,
rounding up the number.
So
a two-story, that'd be 22 feet. So the pitch roof is only give you 2 feet of a pitch roof?
So this would be, so for a single-story home, if you're looking at your walls, so if you think inside your house, tall ceilings can be anywhere from 9 to 12 feet. Mm-hmm. That's a tall ceiling inside. So if you think at the tallest 12 feet, then at your walls at the outside, then usually homes aren't so big that they can't span up to a peak that's at 24 feet. And that slope is easy enough to, have a proper roofing material, shed the water, and it's a normal size design, typical.
This assumes the property of a house of one floor, not the second floor.
Correct. This would be for one floor.
That's exactly my point. If it is 2 floors, then 24 would not work.
24. We've got lots of these like boxy homes with really shallow, flat-ish roofs where it rains a lot. But yes, so someone could shoehorn in 2 stories within 24 feet. I wouldn't recommend it. But to a peak, 24 feet for a single-story home would work.
Yeah, that's why I kind of think that we may be getting to trying to do too much anticipating.
Yeah.
It should just be one floor.
Okay,
Right?
so I'll take out.
What do you want on one floor, as long as it complies with the rest of the regulations? But if you go anything other than one floor, now you got to go back to
Okay, so I'll take out the second sentence. I appreciate that feedback, and we'll just simplify that it's the maximum floor area for any floor above the ground floor.
What does other cities have? Like, do you know? Like,
I don't.
Do you know?
Maybe
if that would
cities
help
have?
us with the verbiage.
None that I know of.
We could do a little digging around in the meantime and
Yeah.
see if
I'm
we can
kinda
find good
curious.
examples.
Yeah, because it would give you a good idea. Yeah. Okay.
I'm only guessing it may be somewhat of a new issue because of the requirement to apply both to middle housing and non-middle housing to
Right.
regular.
And-
Whereas in the past, the way we did it is we created all these volume restrictions and setbacks and all this kind of stuff. And now that all becomes very difficult to apply to middle housing. So this may be somewhat of a new thing.
Yeah. Other cities might approach it using floor area ratio to limit the overall volume.
It would be interesting to see what city of Seattle has, because
Oh, I doubt they have anything like that.
going
Yeah, yeah.
down. It would be totally different.
They're on the other end of the spectrum from us. So does that sound okay for now?
So we won't have any floor plate.
I'll take out floor plate, I promise.
Got it.
Yeah.
I was struggling to put it in my head, so
yeah.
good. I'm happy to let that go.
We get too much in our own heads sometimes. Having, clearer perspectives are greatly appreciated. So thank you so much.
So how we live in this? We live in with option 2, and you wanted our position on
I wanted feedback on, like, you're reading this and you're like, what is going on here? Like, I need that to help me clarify the language. So this way, I'll take all this feedback. We'll clarify it. So that way, when we come back on December 4th for the public hearing, hopefully it's nice and clean and doesn't cause brain damage. And you guys are all comfortable.
So with all this conversation and discussion and exploration and all that, what do you want us to do? You want us to support option 2, or you?
Do you want to support option 2?
Well, I'm asking.
I think generally,
it
sounds like generally.
Not that I don't care. I care deeply. I just want a regulation that I can apply across the board.
I liked option 2.
Okay.
For
With the deletion of that.
with the deletion of the
Okay.
this one. And a floor plate definitely got into my head and I could not get it out. So with that removal, I think option 2 reads really well. It's easy to understand.
Okay.
It has a good definition for it.
I was working on building leases this week for my company, so floor plate is okay and volume is okay. Don't feel
Would
bad.
you like a gratuitous floor plate in there?
Okay, is that it?
Mike, you have anything?
I was listening intently, and I thought y'all were doing great. Hey, one quick thing, Avril, when you come in with any revision, if it's relatively easy and you think it would help illustrate how the regulation would apply, if you were to take it, like 1 or 2 real life examples that you've seen and share those and how we would, apply the code to those examples.
Absolutely.
You gave a couple like what ifs, just at the sort of the top of your head, but there's some others that you probably have run into. So it may be helpful to help nail this thing down next time we see you.
So just as reference, we provided a couple of like rough examples from last time of 2 projects that couldn't move forward. Those were both ground floor expansions that they were looking to do. This option 2 would allow for both of those to move forward. Just FYI.
Okay, thanks. That's all.
Anything else from anyone? Thank you, everyone.
Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Okay, that's about it for this evening. What else, Evan?
Nothing else from us?
Maybe you want to mention the revised deadline
Yeah.
for the traffic comments,
Yep.
which is tomorrow.
Friday. Yeah, it's already Friday. Tomorrow's Friday. Please take a second, read through the email, and use the job form to submit your top 3 traffic-related questions for the SEIS in preparation for the November 20th traffic presentation by the Public Works team. So
in my case, since I have sent 2.5 pages of question, would that be adequate?
we got yours.
See, I just took mine and condensed them into 3 paragraphs. So. Okay, anything else from anyone? If not, someone can move to adjourn.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. We adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.